Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Matt Addison, and while Liverpool don't look to be making any moves for a central defender this month, they are confident of sealing a deal for one of the most talented teenagers in the country, and may well have done so by the time you're listening to or watching this podcast. Derby County's Kaide Gordon is set to move to Merseyside for a fee of around £1 million, which could rise to as much as £3 million depending on add-ons. Gordon is 16, he plays for England's under-16s, and he's a player that many people are very, very excited about indeed. So to get the lowdown on what type of player he is, how excited Liverpool fans should be, and everything else you need to know about Kaide Gordon, I'm delighted to have alongside me Derby County Academy expert Jack Hasler. Jack, before we get into it, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on Blood Red. How are you getting on?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. I mean, there's not too many transfers to sort of talk about across the Premier League at this moment in time, but this seems to sort of be one that we can get our teeth into and get a little bit excited about. So let's talk a little bit about Kaide Gordon, then a name that Liverpool fans hopefully are going to get excited about in the coming seasons. I believe he's a left footer who sort of plays off the right-hand side. Is that the case? And sort of what type of player roughly is he, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, largely he would play off the right, but I think he could play in sort of any position. If you were playing a 4-2-3-1, I think he could play at number 10. He could play on the left as well. But in terms of Liverpool's system, I would say either wing he'd be great. But for most of what I've seen of him playing for Derby under 18s, largely he would be on the right, cutting in on his left foot, putting in crosses, shooting from range. He's got a good pass in him as well, so I think he would be a good addition.
What sort of player is he then? Is he a quick player? What's his big strength, would you say, on and off the ball?
From what I've seen him, I would say largely his dribbling skills. He's a very agile player. He's got a bit of pace about him as well, but obviously he's only 16, so there's still some of his more physical attributes to be improved. But in terms of the skills he's got right now, at the age of 16, he's a top quality player.
Is he a sort of player who would dribble with the ball? Is he more of a passer? Is there even someone that maybe stylistically you could sort of compare him to, maybe?
I mean, it's hard to say right now because obviously at the young age he is in terms of comparing him to someone else. But if he was to sort of bulk up a bit, get a bit more strength and stuff, I would say potentially he could be, in terms of a Liverpool player, perhaps similar to Salah in the way that he's got that left foot. But he's good with both feet as well. But the left foot in particular is really special. And yeah, he's got great pace. Again, as I said, he's great at dribbling with the ball, and he's got a good eye for goal and to create goals as well for his teammates.
Does he sort of strike you then in terms of his strengths? You mentioned there that sort of Mohamed Salah-ish comparison. Is it a sort of natural fit, do you think, the way that Liverpool play? Is it a sort of an intense player? Is he fast? Is he all of those sorts of things that you would look for maybe in a Liverpool player?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, at the age of 16 as well, even if he wasn't that type of player, you can obviously mould him into that player. And I think he's the fact that he's almost been in Derby's under 18s and then fast tracked straight to the first team squad under Wayne Rooney. The fact that Rooney rates him so highly just shows just how good he is. And it's not really a surprise he's got that move to Liverpool, and that I think Manchester United and Tottenham are interested in him as well, because when I first saw him in the under 18s, I think it was last season, he was making his debut against Newcastle. He was probably the best player on the pitch, and he was only 15 at the time. So you could already see then that he was going to go on to good things in the future.
Yeah, it sort of strikes me as a similarity almost to Harvey Elliott when you mentioned the Mohamed Salah comparison. That's something we've discussed in terms of moulding him into that sort of way. Is it a similar sort of deal, do you think, to that one? Obviously, Liverpool got him from Fulham at a similar age and probably have a similar sort of pathway in mind for him.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd imagine he'll be probably with Liverpool for a little bit, training with their academy, and then you'd think maybe he'll go out on loan or something to get a bit more first-team experience. Because like I said, I think in terms of his physical attributes, that's probably the main thing he'd be looking to improve. But if he is to continue improving at the rate he is right now, he's going to be a great player in the future for sure.
Is there any sort of weaknesses apart from his physicality? Obviously, that's something at that age, it's pretty natural for that to be the case. But is there anything that he needs to work on? I mean, how many sort of goals or assists does he get, for example? Or is there anything in terms of that sort of thing that he might need to improve?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very lively player. I think he's always one that's going to score or going to create a goal, to be fair. But in terms of what he'd look to improve, I'd say perhaps his weak foot. I mean, his left foot is like very strong, but I think from what I've seen of him a lot of the time, he is always looking to shift onto his left foot, and perhaps he'd be looking to improve his right as well. I mean, you see, for example, like Mason Greenwood in the game last night, he scored with his right foot. He's become quite good with both feet now, and I think that's something that Kaide Gordon would be looking to do, because at the moment he does seem quite one-footed. But I mean, he's only 16 again, so that's something he can improve on a lot in training when he's training with the big players Liverpool have in their squad.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of time for him to develop. I mean, he made it his senior debut, I think, for Derby in December. I mean, was that sort of a fast-track move? Do you think that he deserved? Were they forced into that in any way in terms of injuries and stuff like that? Or was that sort of just the next step in his development?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it was at all forced. I mean, he's been playing in the under-18s. I think he's only played with the under-23s a couple of times. So really, he was put straight from the under-18s into the first team, training. And then I think Rooney said that he was really impressed by him, and he was sort of almost on par with a lot of Derby's first team players, which, although obviously they're only championship players, at the age of 16, that's something which is really good. And I think the debut was fully deserved. And even though it was only about 5 minutes, he did really well. I think he barged over Lucas Djukovic, who plays for Birmingham. He's like a big 6'4" striker or something, and that was quite impressive to see when he's only 16. But I mean, if he was to stay at Derby for longer, I'm sure he would have made more appearances to the end of the season. But obviously now he's off to Liverpool, and I'm sure he'll be just amongst the academy there. But it's going to be a great move for him for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't be too long before he's training with Liverpool's first team, potentially. I mean, just in terms of since he's made his debut, it seems to me like he's not really played too much academy football, because Wayne Rooney has kept him around the Derby first team. I suppose that just underlines, doesn't it, how much Wayne Rooney sort of values him and thinks that he is a huge talent.
Yeah, he's been on the bench in pretty much every game since then, apart from the match at the weekend against QPR, obviously, because I think he was being rested due to the move to Liverpool. But I mean, he probably, if Derby were doing a bit better, I'm sure he would have come on more. It's just because in the last few games, Derby have been in quite tight scorelines towards the end of the game, so he's not quite had the opportunity to come on. And obviously against Birmingham, Derby were winning, I think 4-0 at the time, so that was why he was able to come on. But yeah, when he did come on, he was great, and I'm sure he'll impress when he's at Liverpool playing for their younger sides.
Yeah, certainly. I would imagine probably the under-18s to begin with, and probably pretty soon after that the under-23s as well. I mean, so yeah, Manchester United and Tottenham also, as you say, believed to be interested in the player, and Liverpool, I think, believe that they're in pole position mainly because they can offer him the first team path that he will desire. They've convinced him and his family, we believe, if this move does take place and happens as we think it will. So he's obviously very highly rated. He's a player that Liverpool are prepared to invest in as well. Obviously, £1 million up front, potentially 3 times that, depending on add-ons as well. I mean, why is it that Derby value him at that sort of money? Is that just the going rate now for these 16-year-olds who presumably are among the best in the country?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Rooney himself says that he rates him as probably one of, or not, if not the best 16-year-old in the country. So I wouldn't say it's too surprising that he's going for that amount. But I think Derby perhaps would have actually looked for more. But I think because he's not actually contracted by the club, that's why he's only allowed to go for that fee. But so I think a lot of Derby fans are frustrated that it's only that amount. But I mean, for a 16-year-old, it's a good deal for Derby, but also for Liverpool. I mean, if like he was to go on and become a great player, he would potentially sell on for a lot more. Or if he was to stay at Liverpool, he would be well worth that price for sure. So I think for a club like Liverpool, it's definitely worth the gamble, 100%.
Yeah, it seems to be the type of deal similar to Elliott, as we mentioned, Sepp van den Berg. Matis Musialowski came in last summer. It seems to be the sort of deal that Liverpool are looking to more and more now. I mean, he doesn't turn 17, I don't think, until October, so he can't sign a professional deal. As you say, that sort of helps with the price tag. But just before we finish, I want to talk a little bit more about Wayne Rooney as well, because it seems like he's a big fan of his. And of course, he knows a thing or two himself about being a young 16-year-old prodigy in senior football.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that Wayne Rooney rates him so highly just shows just how good he is, because obviously Rooney, when he was a similar age, he was playing for Everton and he was doing really well. And I think if he's the manager of Derby and he's giving Gordon a chance in the first team, he clearly rates him very highly, because, I mean, there's probably not many players better to be rated by than Wayne Rooney, to be fair.
Yeah, and how much do you think it will help, obviously, Gordon, in terms of he's not worked with Rooney for that long, but it's obviously something that's going to be beneficial for him moving forward to have worked with someone like that when you are so young. It must have made a big impression on him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure even in the short time that they've been together, I'm sure Rooney's had some effect on him, because, as I said, Rooney was going through like a similar sort of period when he was younger, where he was like a big prospect, and I'm sure he can give he did give Gordon some tips on how to improve and how to deal with the sort of hype that's around him right now.
Yeah, certainly. It certainly sounds like Liverpool have got themselves a deal for a player who's very well thought of at Derby and very highly rated across Europe as well. So, yeah, they've already signed Harvey Elliott, Sepp Vandenberg, Musialowski and Malcolm O'Fraundorf, as I mentioned, to name just four. And it seems Liverpool's plan to hoover up the best talent is set to continue. That's all we've got time for here on the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. Analysing Anfield will be with you later today. But from myself, Matt Addison, and from my guest, Jack Hasler, thank you for listening and for watching, and goodbye for now.